This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
Today on CityCast Philly, Tyree Wallace was sentenced to life in prison for the 1997 killing of a Point Breeze deli owner. Ever since, he argued that he was innocent. And finally, in November, with help from a lawyer/musician who wrote a song declaring Tyree's innocence, Tyree was released from prison. We spoke to both Tyree Wallace and David Perry from the law firm Blank Rome and the band Athensville, just 70 days after Tyree was released. It's Monday, March 3rd. I'm executive producer Matt Katz, filling in for Trinae Nuri, and here's what Philly's talking about. Tyree, I would love to just start at the beginning. Tell me a little bit about the story of your life until you were 19 years old. You grew up in Point Breeze?
I did. So, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm grateful to be here. And for the overwhelming majority of my childhood, I did grow up in the Point Breeze area on a little block called Cleveland Street, which is between 18th and 19th of Ellsworth and Federal in South Philadelphia.
Yeah.
However, I did do a lot of moving around as a young man also. So my mother and my father, they separated when I was too young to remember. So I did a lot of moving back and forth between my mother and my father. Also, I spent some time living with my grandmother in West Philadelphia. But the overwhelming majority of the time was in the Point Breeze area.
And you're a older teenager. What were you up to? Were you in school right before the incident that we're going to talk about? What were you up to?
Unfortunately, I was not. I was just to be fully transparent, I was just not being a productive member of society at that time. I was a teenager, as you said. I am an avid believer that your character is made up of your everyday habits. And my habits were really formed by my environment at that time, you know what I mean? And that's not trying to escape accountability. It's just what it was from my perspective, you know what I mean? The habits of that immediate community were I wasn't going to school, I was running the streets, I was using marijuana every day. You know, I was just being a wild kid. Now, I don't think that I was a particularly bad child. You know, matter of fact, I know I wasn't a bad child.
Yeah.
I wasn't a menace to society, but I wasn't being productive. I wasn't working and I wasn't in school.
But then you were accused of doing a bad thing.
100%.
There's a deli owner in the neighborhood. He's shot and killed, and they come for you. They arrest you.
Absolutely. So Mr. John Young Soo King, as I've said multiple times in different mediums and different opportunities, was an absolute giant in our community. I cannot emphasize that enough, right? So he was a deli store owner, he was a father, he was a husband, he was an entrepreneur, but he was an entrepreneur that was very, very unique. So Mr. John Young Soo King was of Korean American descent. And the other stores in our communities that were of Korean American descent, they only employed other Korean Americans for the most part. Mr. John Young Soo King intentionally and purposefully hired the people of that immediate community. At the time, that was, I didn't understand that, but I now understand the socioeconomic impact of that purposeful action. I understand that is why there was such a family feel in Mr. John Young Soo King's store. That's why there was safety. That's why there was, just this familiarity. But there's this family feel when you walk into Mr. Soo King's establishment.
Empower. Claire is practicing her breathing for her upcoming yoga retreat in Bali. Has she ever done yoga before? No. But Claire worked with Empower on her savings and investment strategy. She got good at money, so she can be a little bad. Empower. Invest well, live a little. Join our 19 million customers today at empower.com.
Past performance is not indicative of future returns. Investing involves risk. You may lose money. Advisory services are provided for a fee by Empower Advisor Group, LLC, EAG, a registered investment advisor with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Om Namaste.
This episode is brought to you by Honda. Introducing the all-new, all-terrain Honda Passport Trail Sport, the most off-road capable Honda Passport Honda has ever dreamt up. The Passport features increased ground clearance, roof rails on all trims, and available specially developed all-terrain tires. And you'll stay comfortable with tri-zone climate control and available features like heated and ventilated front seats and a panoramic moonroof. Learn more at honda.com/passport.
With all that being said, he absolutely 100% did not deserve what took place to him. He was robbed, shot, and killed by someone. Absolutely was undeserving of that. Mr. John Young Soo King would feed you if you were hungry. Mr. John Young Soo King would protect you if he was in his store. And he met this fate. And I always want to make sure that I emphasize, while what happened to me was absolutely tragic, I spent 26 years of my life incarcerated for a crime that I can prove that I didn't commit, that the decision makers in our city know I didn't commit, have acknowledged that I didn't commit. But the true tragedy was that Mr. John Young Soo King had his life taken.
So this man is tragically shot and killed. You're arrested. You're convicted for this. How did you make sense of first the initial arrest, then this, what has proven to be a sham of a trial, and then this enormous sentence that you faced? How did you make sense of that?
So I was extremely naive, and that worked to my detriment, but also my benefit, right? And what I mean by that is I literally believed that I couldn't be found guilty for something I didn't commit. I had bought in fully to the American story that the justice system is the best in the world and that it operates in a certain way. I genuinely believed that until I heard the guilty sentence. So that worked to my detriment because I remember being incarcerated in the county prison and an older gentleman coming to me, trying to tell me how the law library worked. And my response with him was based in so much ignorance. I literally said, no, I didn't commit it. I didn't do it. He's like, all right, I get that, but you need to get in there and learn this and understand this. I'm like, no, I really didn't do it. I'm good. you know what I'm saying? That was my literal response to him. And I remember it to this day, and it haunts me, because who knows how the trial would have went had I paid heed to that warning that was given to me. The fact that I was just like, okay, I just have to clear this up. I just got to get this straightened out. I just have to, and it gave me an ability to deal with the enormity of receiving a life sentence. And I didn't understand that life in Pennsylvania means life. That means that I was 19 years old.
And you were going to die in prison.
And I was going to die in prison. So I didn't really have that understanding either. You know what I mean? So being naive to the system, how it works, what it means, and the mountain that I was fighting, it was a detriment, but it was also a benefit.
And we're going to talk about what you experienced from a legal perspective and what happened in that trial in a minute. But I want you to talk about a little bit about how you focused yourself in prison. You're in county lockup and then you end up in prison. What did you do? How did you pass the time?
Absolutely. So when we talk about how I focus myself, I have to pay credit to the many mentors that I have who are still currently incarcerated, some who have passed, some who are now home. But there's an entire culture that exists inside of incarceration, inside of the Department of Corrections that people are just unaware of. There are prison organizations. There's a culture of philanthropy. There's a culture of paying it forward that exists in prison. There are, for years I was a hospice volunteer. And that happened because someone who I respected was a hospice volunteer.
Hospice volunteer meaning you're helping elderly and sick inmates.
Yes. So as we are aware, when someone is on hospice, it has been determined that there is no help for them, that they are just dying. So our responsibility was just to help them die with dignity, not staying in soiled clothing, being able to eat if they can, making sure that the nurses give them pain medication, because those things without hospice volunteers do not happen for prisoners.
Wow.
Those basic human dignities as a prisoner, I can't think of many worse fates than dying in prison. Alone, isolated, not being able to get pain medication, just have some shred of decency or dignity. And I understand that a lot of people feel as though that prisoners deserve that fate. No one deserves that fate there. They just don't.
I imagine this also involved like sitting with people as they're dying, holding their hand, praying with them.
All of absolutely.
What did you learn out of that? Either about life or death, or what did you get out of that?
So I learned that my purpose, that what I care most about, what that brings me the most joy, is helping other people. Literally. And if you do not have your purpose in life, you are just moving around aimlessly.
You just pointed to the man sitting next to you, and I want to turn to him because you're in prison and you're trying to start to get your conviction overturned. It doesn't work. And then from what I understand, you meet the man sitting next to you. Is that right?
100%.
Tell us who he is.
This is my friend, my brother, my family, attorney David Perry, who is an intellectual property lawyer, who wound up being a homicide lawyer, a homicide appellate lawyer that absolutely had a lion's share of the reason why I'm here now. His advocacy, his work ethic. He's a fierce fighter, and he's, again, my friend and my brother, David Perry.
Dave, pick up the story for us. How did you first come about hearing about Tyree?
Well, in 2019, before COVID, one day an email came around to the attorneys at Blank Rome, where I work and where I have worked since summer of 1998. And the email came at the sort of request of the Pennsylvania Innocence Project, and said they were working with an inmate who had some intellectual property questions, and would anyone be willing to answer some IP questions. I didn't know what the nature of the questions were, and it's certainly not a typical source for pro bono IP questions. We get those questions more routinely from arts organizations and such. So I responded and said I would be willing to do that. And after I think some email communications with the email system and getting it set up, either maybe I had a phone call or an email communication, which you got to get set up with the prison system. But ultimately, then I went to see Tyree Wallace in person and began to kind of field those questions and figure out what they were.
When you walk into the prison to go visit him, are you first skeptical about really what's going on here? And does your mind at some point change about like who this man is and what he might have experienced?
Well, I wasn't skeptical, but it definitely, I had visited, I think, in New Jersey prison some years in the past. It's a pretty daunting place to be. You walk through those doors, driving into the prison is a very long and sort of ominous driveway, winding up through the hills, down past the barbed wire in the yard. And so you're already experiencing a pretty stark reality. So we sat down with Tyree and another gentleman that together the two of them had founded an organization called Man Up.
While they were locked up, obviously.
Right,
they founded
a prison-based organization that I would have described it as sort of like a self-help, peer-to-peer kind of program, helping inmates become better men, hence the name Man Up. And at that time, my understanding was it was actually going so well and was so well received by the prison and by the inmates that there was talk of replicating it potentially at other prisons. So Tyree had questions about the naming and the curriculum and essentially what anyone might have questions about if something that they had created was going to be replicated or licensed or built in other locations, who owns it. And so basic questions, IP questions. And that was my purview at that moment.
So you weren't there to try to take on his criminal case.
No.
You were there just to try to help him with his organization.
Yeah.
Wow. And then how did you start helping him with his organization and then you learn about his backstory?
I think looking back, I would say it was about a year during which the ensuing year where I would ask Tyree, how's it going with your case? What's going on? I knew the Innocence Project was involved. I knew he, through their help, had applied for clemency, which is at the state level in Harrisburg. But at that point, I'm just inquiring as a concerned friend and colleague and attorney, just saying, how's it going? But I would say after about a year, I think it became pretty clear to me, the more questions that were put to me, the more I was like, man, you do not have a quarterback, do you? Like he didn't really have, there was a lawyer in the orbit sort of there somewhere, but Tyree and other supporters were frustrated. Action wasn't really being taken. So it took me a while, and maybe I reached a point of, I don't know, concern or frustration where I realized that he needed help. I was beginning to read and understand just by reading the Innocence Project's write-ups and things like that. You read the story and you read the narrative and you begin to realize how this conviction came about and now what the truth is that's being told.
More on Tyree Wallace's efforts to prove his innocence after the break. So what were the legal issues and the legal malpractice that happened in the courtroom when Tyree was first convicted?
Well, geez, I guess there were several things. Tyree had an alibi from a couple of witnesses that I guess I would just say was very much discounted and discredited by the prosecution as, not believable witnesses, because the reality is, I think all of the defendants and all of the witnesses, almost to a person, they're all young, Black Philadelphians, many of whom have their own vulnerabilities and pressure points that police or through the work of prosecution were able to push on and lean on and get people to say things ultimately that many people just became self-serving, and someone's going to pay the price for that. And unfortunately, it would be Tyree in that case. There was a specific witness that many years later, Tyree and I would talk to, even just last year. There's discussion in the trial transcript of bringing this witness to the courtroom, and he would have absolutely attested to Tyree's innocence. But the guy was in the hospital. The lawyer was not really proactively getting the witness to the courtroom. At one point, the judge says, I will get him here. If you want him here, I'll get him here. And you're reading the transcript, and then it just ends. And so here we are decades later reading it, being like, man, if that lawyer had actually stuck with it, that's one more witness that could have come forward to speak to Tyree's innocence, who's alive today and still professes Tyree's innocence.
Absolutely.
And there's no DNA?
No.
Then or now, obviously.
No.
And then this goes on for years, right?
Yes.
At this point, Tyree has filed, in the course of 22 years, 7 post-conviction.
Incredible.
6 or 7 post-conviction relief petitions, filed, denied, over and over through various lawyers on his own at certain times throughout those 20-some years, until we would get to this more recent one.
Where you would ultimately plead guilty to a lesser charge, right? And that was what led to your release.
Yes. If you don't mind, I would love to add a little context.
Please.
What I think is key to be understood, Mr. Dave obviously did a phenomenal job articulating what he did, but specifically in the 90s, there was a culture of corruption that existed in Philadelphia. And this culture of corruption led to myself and countless others being incarcerated for things they didn't do, being over-sentenced, being overcharged, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when we think about the fact that the DA who tried my case was later fired for misconduct, right? Think about the standard that has to be met in order to fire a district attorney.
An assistant district attorney.
An assistant ADA,
Yep,
excuse me. When we think about the fact that multiple officers in my case are on the corrupt cop list, right? Mm-hmm. There's this whole culture of corruption that exists. We think about the fact that, as you said, there was no DNA evidence. There was only one eyewitness to the crime. He testified at trial that I was not the person who came into the store, right? So when we think about the fact that the state's main witness told the lies that he told to me on the stand, immediately went and confessed to the court bailiff, Sheriff John Hamilton, who has become one of my staunch advocates, right? Immediately admits to him that everything I just said was a lie. What do I do about this? Then came on and immediately recanted. The Sheriff John Hamilton testified on my behalf that I had alibi with, that I had alibi testimony, that there was. So when you think about all of these different things, of which there are countless more, there is not one piece of evidence that by any objective person can be looked at that points to me being guilty. It just doesn't exist. It comes as a result of a culture of corruption that existed in Philadelphia, and a lot of people have fallen victim to that. And one of the things that I always want to say is everybody needs to care about this, because we are all held to the limitations of every oppressive system.
And over the last 20 years or so, there's been more of a recognition of this system of corruption, as you eloquently just described it. And maybe that's what led you to have such support on the outside. I mean, you became something of a cause célèbre for people who saw you as an example of how the system ruins lives of young black men in the city of Philadelphia.
Undoubtedly.
So you had all of this support on the outside from Philadelphians, right? I mean,
yes.
And while you're still locked up.
100%.
And that all leads us, and a lot transpires, and endless hours of legal filings and court hearings and whatnot. But November 4th,
yes,
just this past November 4th, Tyree,
yes,
that's the day you got out.
It is a bittersweet day because I was liberated. I'm no longer incarcerated. But the people who are the decision makers in our city, they know I didn't commit this crime. Yet innocence in Pennsylvania is not a reason to overturn a conviction. I understand that is counterintuitive to what we believe we know about the system. But if you are convicted of a crime, the fact that you are innocent, that is not enough reason to be let out of prison. Yeah. That doesn't make sense, but it is true. So you have to prove a constitutional violation. You have to meet some metric or some amorphous standard that they decide whether it's good enough or not, right? You have to meet some standard that they put out there. The only reason that I am here today is because collective voices said, we don't care about procedure. We don't care about this standard. We don't care. He didn't commit the crime, let him out. And we did a bunch of radical things in order to make that happen, of which Dave was instrumental in helping to structure. He was instrumental in helping to meet, because I'm 26 years in. I'm like, listen, I don't care what we have to do. Let's make it happen.
You ultimately pled guilty to
yes.
Just a lesser crime. That was the only avenue you had.
Yes. So
that.
Current judge, Scott DeClaudio, who I'm grateful for. So he's like, listen, you have to take this deal. So he had me put my right hand up, swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, and then tell a lie in front of a courtroom full of people where everybody, including him, knew it was a lie, that I had nothing to do with this crime. But the only way out to not die in prison was to do so. And then the final point I want to say is that my name being tied to the death of Mr. John Young Soo King, to me, is absolutely unacceptable. So I told District Attorney Larry Krasner, who I respect, who I think is a man of integrity, who has a spine of steel, who is doing some phenomenal work in the city. But I told him face to face that this is unacceptable, that I'm going to continue to fight, that I'm going to make as much noise as possible, that me having this conviction for something that I didn't do is not acceptable. So we are continuing that fight. It's a hard fight, but we're going to continue to fight it. And, because again, that is the biggest crime. Not only my name being tied to the death of Mr. John Young Soo King, somebody who I admire immensely.
Dave, the November 4th, are you in the courtroom?
Oh, yeah.
So
I'm sitting next to Tyree.
Does Tyree come in prison garb?
Yeah. The reality is that the judge had revealed to not only the attorneys, but he had revealed to the courtroom that Tyree would be going home Tyree does not know this at that moment. So on that day, I just didn't get my hopes up one way or the other. I guess, I think, Tyree, you have a different view of that, of sort of what mentally you needed to believe was going to happen on that day. For me, even just this journey I'd been on for 4 or 5 years, people in Tyree's shoes get used to disappointment. They lower their expectations because by this point they have to. And Tyree's not alone in that. Everyone in his position throughout the country has had so many delays, so many disappointments, so many kicking of the can that they learn not to get their hopes up.
But then it happens, right?
Yes.
Then it happened. We were talking to the judge before the hearing that we had witnesses. We had friends and supporters teed up, ready to vouch for Tyree, to just move the needle maybe a little bit and just say, we just want you to hear from some people who've known him for a long time, a professor, a student, other supporters. And Judge DeClaudio basically said, I got it. I'm good. And we were basically like, all right, okay. So when he revealed it to the courtroom, like Tyree said, Judge DeClaudio can pull zingers every now and then, and he had warned the courtroom on multiple occasions in prior hearings, this is not a place for cheering, yelling, hooting, anything. Like, this is a courtroom we have a decorum here. But in that moment, Judge DeClaudio's, I think, just his normal human side was, these people are here to witness something special, and he let the people in the courtroom, standing room only, enjoy that moment and emotionally celebrate that moment. But this is still minutes before Tyree has been brought in.
So you're not even in the courtroom?
No.
I think Keir leaned over to Tyree and said, you're going home today.
That's exactly what took place. And to segue there, I want to make sure, so Dave brought it up first, and I was absolutely going to bring it up on how big of a piece Keir Bradford Gray was to our situation.
Yeah, the other attorney. Yeah.
Yes. So her impact can't be overstated. She and I had times where we were fighting back and forth.
Yeah.
Two very strong-willed, strong personality people, right? But the impact that she brought, the credibility, the knowledge, the understanding that she brought was invaluable. She just has a presence about her that demands respect.
So she leans over.
Yes.
You're going home today.
Absolutely.
And your physical reaction, your emotional reaction?
It was surprisingly flat.
Yeah.
It was surprisingly flat. I don't know exactly why that is. I guess I was happy. You know what I mean? I love to talk. But when the judge asked me, did I have anything to say? I was like, absolutely not. Not in a negative way, because I'm like, listen, if you've already decided to go home, what need is there for me to give this grandiose speech that I had prepared? I had something prepared, ready to go.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I was happy, I was relieved, I was looking forward. But in that immediate moment, it was flat. I still don't know how to really feel about it. Obviously, I'm grateful. I'm excited. Like, I have a birthday every 5 minutes, it seems like, because I'm seriously, because and I don't know. So I'm grateful for that, because I don't know under what other circumstance I could experience life the way that I have over the past 70 days. Every time I turn around, I'm doing something new for the first time, meeting someone, experiencing something, eating something, learning something. Every 5 minutes, like, you know what I mean? That is not an exaggeration. That
Sounds
is
like a
literal
rebirth.
thing. That is what it is, and I am grateful for that. Obviously, I am upset. There's anger there that for the past 26 years I was incarcerated. Now, to me, anger is not a objectively negative emotion. It's just an emotion. What we do with that anger is the determining factor of whether it's negative or positive. So there is anger that our system facilitates and protects still those type of actions, but I choose to take that anger and channel it into positivity. Some of the best things that have ever happened in the history of this world happened because people were angry. The women's suffrage movement happened because women were angry at their status in this country. The civil rights movement happened because people were angry at their status in this country. This country was established because the forefathers of this country were angry at what was happening to them, and they came here and decided to, start anew.
So how are you starting anew? What does life have in store for you? How are you channeling that relief and anger toward something else going forward?
Beautiful. Excellent question. So with the help of Mr. David Perry, I couldn't have got it done without him. I was able to establish a 501c4 nonprofit organization while I was incarcerated called Systemic Reformative Change. Prior to that, I had a 501c3 called Man Up, also established with the assistance and the guidance of Mr. David Perry. But the 501c3, I was only able to help small groups of people for the most part. And I care about systems. Everything in this country is controlled by systems: the banking system, the housing system, the criminal justice system, which means there's a group of people sitting in a room similarly situated to this, making decisions for everybody else. And so Systemic Reformative Change is a 501c4 nonprofit organization that is focused on taking what we did with the Free Tyree movement of collective voices demanding change. I am now doing that with my 501c4. We are focused on justice-impacted communities, which is a broad term for currently formerly incarcerated, their families, and communities that have been targeted by mass incarceration. In the long term, we want to create a protected status for that community. So when I came home, I didn't commit the crime. I could prove I didn't commit the crime. My credit and my finances said that I could move in a pretty decent neighborhood, I could get a nice apartment. But the fact that I'm formerly incarcerated, they have the absolute ability to just say, no, we're not going to let you live here. They couldn't do that to black people. They couldn't do that to women. They couldn't say that you're the LGBT community, you're not going to live here. But it's totally legal to discriminate against people who are formerly incarcerated. So we want to provide a protected status for that community that just says you can't discriminate against them. But that's a long-term goal. In the short term, we want to have everyday wins for this community by utilizing collective voices to put people in position that will support policies that protect everyone.
Amazing. And Dave, before we let you guys go, the one of the many surprising turns of the story is that you're actually like a punk rocker on the side, or you're a lawyer on the side and a musician.
It's more alternative than it is punk.
Okay, got it. Tell me about the music and how they're really good song ties into Tyree's story.
So I co-founded a band called Athensville. Athensville is for people in the Philly area would know, it's the original, or maybe don't know, it's the original name of Ardmore, Pennsylvania, which is where we first rehearsed. So that's where the name came from, about 10 or so years ago when I founded the band with Matt Tagling. Matt and I went to a cabin in upstate Pennsylvania in the cold winter of February, I think, 2022. And we were writing for the whole weekend songs for what would become a new album or a new EP. I composed the music initially, and Matt sort of composes the lyrics and the melodies, the vocal melodies. And at the time, as we're up there in the cabin, I'm, obviously deep into the world of trying to help Tyree on the side of my normal job, I guess I'll call it. And Tyree had given a keynote speech to a really good organization in Philadelphia called ICJ, the Institute for Community Justice. I had the link to it on YouTube.
Keynote speech from prison.
A keynote speech that Tyree gave from prison on Zoom. Tyree talks about desiderata. Use this word desiderata. It was not a word that I knew. And the theme of Tyree's talk was justice is desiderata, that which is desired, Latin for that which is desired. So when I was up at the cabin, at some point I said, Matt, you really should watch this. It's very inspiring. I think you might enjoy it. And he did. And I think Matt watched it. We sat there. I think we watched it together. And he said, this is what I need. Like, this is an idea. I need ideas. I need lyrical inspiration. Said, I'm going downstairs, went into the basement of this cabin, took a pad of paper, and came back with the lyrics to what would become a song that we called Desiderata. parentheses, free Tyree Wallace. And because Matt and I come from a history of political rock, and all the bands that I grew up with are social justice, politically minded. I mean, I'm a U2 fanatic. So this was sort of our own foray, I guess, into that. So we wrote the song, and the hope was that the more people that would hear it with Tyree's name in the name of the song, it would just be one more person or two more people that would ask and say, who is that? We used to just sort of say, like, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if Tyree actually came out and maybe could come see us play? We'll play this song in front of what a full circle moment.
Is that going to happen?
It has happened.
It happened.
No way.
It happened on November 23rd. We played at 118 North, and Tyree got to come see us play and come up on stage and talk. And there were a lot of people there who knew the song and knew the story, had not met Tyree. We had friends, family, his friends. So it did come full circle only, 19 days after Tyree came home. It was hard to separate, the musical side from what we were doing with Tyree, and there was every reason to combine it into a song and try to do it tastefully and not pretentiously. It's our music. It was a genuine inspiration. Matt wrote the lyrics. I sort of helped him by his side with some of it, because now if you go back and listen to the song, you'll understand Tyree Wallace when you read the lyrics of the song.
Well, let's go out on Desiderata by Athensville as we conclude the episode. And Tyree Wallace, welcome home, man.
Thank you.
Dave, thank you so much. Dave
Thank
Perry,
you.
thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Grateful.
Closer to redemption, planting 501c seeds. Let the sunlight disinfect.
That's all for today here on CityCast Philly. If you enjoyed this episode about Tyree Wallace, share it with a friend, leave us a review, and subscribe. You can sign up for our morning newsletter, Hey Philly, to learn more about what else Philly's talking about. Trinae will be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye-bye.